My neighbor and I shared a wall until one day she demanded I leave my own home. When I refused, she blasted frequencies through the wall until my child got sick. I confronted her. "Why are you doing this?" She grinned. "Because you don't deserve quiet." I put my ear to the wall and heard something that shouldn't be there. I live in Medford, Oregon. Small town, pretty quiet. At least it used to be. I bought my place in 2017, after my divorce. It's a 2-bedroom townhouse. Nothing fancy, just enough for me and my son, Micah. I was proud of it. I worked 2 jobs for years just to scrape together a down payment. I was finally going to give Micah a stable home. The townhouses here are all connected in pairs. I share a wall with one neighbor. Her name is Cheryl. When I first moved in, she seemed normal. Older, maybe late 50s. Lived alone. Smoked a lot. Kept to herself. That was fine by me. I wasn't looking to make friends. Just wanted peace and a place to raise my kid. Micah was born a year later. That's when the problem started. He was colicky. I mean really bad. Screamed through the night. It nearly broke me. I was barely sleeping, trying to work, trying to be a good dad, and trying not to cry while holding a baby who wouldn't stop crying himself. About 2 weeks into that nightmare, I got a note under my door. No envelope, no signature. Just a piece of paper folded once. Inside, "Control your baby or leave." I figured it was Cheryl. Who else could it be? I knocked on her door, but she didn't answer. The next day, she cornered me outside the mailboxes. "You need to get that baby under control," she said. "This isn't a daycare." I apologized. Told her I was trying. She didn't care. She turned and walked away mid-sentence. I did everything I could. Soundproofing foam on the nursery wall. Blackout curtains. White noise machine. Even moved Micah's crib to the far corner. He finally started sleeping through the night around 7 months. I thought it was over. But then something new started. It was a sound, low, steady. Almost like a hum. I only noticed it at night, when the house was quiet. I thought it might be the fridge or a pipe. But it was always coming from one place, the wall we shared with Cheryl. At first, I ignored it. I was tired. I didn't want to start another neighbor war. But then Micah started waking up again. He wasn't crying this time. He was shaking. Literally trembling in his crib, covering his ears. One night I walked in and found him curled up in the corner, sobbing with no sound. That was the night I pressed my ear to the wall. I expected to hear a heater or maybe music. What I heard made my stomach drop. It was noise. But not normal. It sounded layered. Like someone had taken a bunch of radio stations, jumbled them up, and played them all at once. Voices, static, high-pitched tones. It made my ears ring after a few seconds. I knocked on Cheryl's door the next morning. She opened it with a smirk, cigarette in hand. I said, "Why are you doing this? Why are you playing sounds through the wall?" She grinned. Not even hiding it. "Because you don't deserve quiet," she said. Then she shut the door in my face. I didn't sleep that night. Or the next. Micah got worse. Night terrors. Nosebleeds. He started saying weird things. Once he looked me in the eye and whispered. The whispers are inside the walls. He was barely 2 years old. I took him to the doctor. Blood tests, hearing tests, a full workup. Nothing wrong. They said he was healthy. I knew better. I called the police. Filed a noise complaint. They came by, knocked on her door. She smiled, played innocent. Said she didn't even have a stereo. They didn't hear anything. Of course they didn't. The sound only played at night, and only through that one wall. I hired a sound engineer. Paid him $400 just to come out with his equipment. He confirmed it. There were unnatural frequencies being transmitted through the wall. Ultrasound, some in the 20 to 25 kHz range. He looked nervous when I asked him to trace them. "This is deliberate," he said. "This isn't music or a TV. This is targeted." He left early. Wouldn't give me a full report. I didn't know what to do. My son was getting worse. He would scream in his sleep, hit himself, say things like, "Don't let her in," or, "It's behind the wall." I couldn't afford to move. I was trapped. That's when I started recording. I bought a baby monitor with sound recording. I set it near the wall and left it on overnight. The next morning, I played it back. There were voices. Not ours. Not Cheryl's. Distorted, glitchy voices. Some repeating words I couldn't understand. One kept saying, "Shut the baby up. Shut the baby up." Over and over. Then I heard it, Micah's cry. But not Liv. A recording of it. Looped, chopped, distorted. She had recorded my baby crying and was playing it back to us, on a loop, underneath the noise. That broke something in me. I didn't go to the cops this time. I called an old friend from high school. He works for a defense contractor. I told him I needed help figuring out what kind of sound tech was being used on us. He came by the next week, brought all kinds of gear. Frequency scanners, thermal cameras, stuff I didn't understand. We drilled a tiny hole in the wall behind a bookshelf. Just big enough to push a scope camera through. What we saw made both of us step back. On Cheryl's side of the wall was a full audio setup. Soundboards. Dozens of little speakers. Metal boxes with blinking lights. Headphones. Switches. Timers. Wires going every direction. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the wall. It was covered in photos. Photos of Micah. Blurry shots from our backyard. One of him on the porch. One through the nursery window. There were notes written next to them. Stuff like, 2 a.m. response, effective, decibel 80 causes physical shaking, cry loops trigger subject faster than tone only. It was all handwritten. And it wasn't random. It was a study. She was experimenting on us. My friend looked pale. He said, "This is illegal. This is beyond harassment." He pulled one of the devices through the hole and found logs on it. Names. Dates. Street addresses. Some crossed out. I looked one up. It was a house in Grants Pass. That neighbor had moved after 6 months. I checked another. They had filed a civil suit against unexplained sound harassment. No proof. Case dismissed. It was a pattern. She was doing this to people. Over and over. I stopped thinking. I wanted to kick down her door. I wanted to tear her entire setup apart with my bare hands. But I didn't. I sent everything to a lawyer. All the photos. The sound files. The footage from the scope camera. We filed for an emergency restraining order. The court granted it. Then we filed for a judge-ordered inspection of her property. That's when everything exploded. The court ordered a full inspection of Cheryl's property within 5 days. She didn't show up to the hearing. Her lawyer came alone and tried to stall, saying Cheryl was dealing with medical issues. The judge didn't care. The evidence was too strong. We got the green light. An officer would accompany a technician to inspect the wall, under court supervision. I thought maybe it was over. It wasn't. The day before the inspection, Cheryl disappeared. Gone. Her car wasn't in the driveway. Her curtains were closed. No one answered the door. The technician showed up the next day with the officer, and Cheryl still didn't open up. They gave her 3 knocks. Then they forced entry. I watched from my porch as they walked in. About 15 minutes later, one of them came back out and called for backup. They found the sound setup all right. Most of it. Some of it had been torn out, ripped cables, missing equipment, empty shelf space. But enough was still there. They took photos. Bagged everything left behind. They found more pictures. More names. Another wall of notes. Then they found the basement. That's where things got darker. Turns out, Cheryl had a door hidden behind a shelf in her hallway. Behind it was a staircase, narrow, steep, unfinished. It led to a small underground room. No lights, no furniture. Just a chair, a table, and more wires. Microphones. A speaker pointed at the ceiling. And a metal cabinet. Inside were dozens of flash drives. All labeled by year. One of the officers told me later. We stopped counting after 50. Most had audio files. Some had videos. No one said what was on them. But the police sealed the place up. Cheryl's house was now a crime scene. A few hours later, Cheryl was officially reported missing. The police put out a notice. Said she was a person of interest, possibly a suspect in a harassment and illegal surveillance case. But that wasn't the twist. The twist came 2 days later, when my lawyer got a call from a detective in Salem. He had seen Cheryl's name before. 2 years ago, a man had filed a restraining order against a woman named Cheryl and Beckman. Same birth date. Same face. She had been renting a basement apartment in Salem. That man claimed she was harassing him with sound. Said she would play strange noises at night through the ceiling. Claimed he heard voices. Thought he was losing his mind. No one believed him. He moved out after 6 months. Cheryl vanished before the case went to court. This was her pattern. She moved from city to city, always into places with shared walls. Always alone. Always targeting someone, usually with a baby or a dog. Anyone who made noise. Only now did people start connecting the dots. There were 4 past restraining orders in 3 towns. None of them stuck. She always moved before the process was complete. Always just ahead of the law. And she was doing more than harassment. She was testing people. Recording their reactions. Studying how they responded to different frequencies, different types of noise, how long they lasted before breaking down. This wasn't just personal. This was obsessive. The police went public with it. News stories started running in the area. Rogue tech harassment suspect on the run, townhouse terror, neighbors claim orchestrated audio torture. My face was on the local news. They blurred Micah's. I thought that would be the end. I was wrong. A week later, I got an email. No sender name. No subject. Just a message. You stopped one wall. But how many more do you think there are? Attached was a 5-second audio file. It was Micah crying. The exact clip from the baby monitor, but edited, layered with static, chopped into tiny loops, spliced back together. I threw up in the sink. I told the detective. He traced the email. It was routed through a dozen proxies. Couldn't be tracked. I moved Micah into my sister's place that same day. But I didn't leave. I stayed. Because I wanted to end this. And one night, I found something else. Something no one else had caught yet. On one of the remaining devices the police bagged, there was a folder they hadn't decrypted yet. My defense contractor friend offered to help again. He cracked it. Inside was a list. A spreadsheet. With timestamps, notes, locations, and a heading at the top. Stimulation phase complete. Below it, field testing underway. And under that, subject ID number 004, reactive to audio, suggestive stimuli. That was me. She had been testing me the whole time. And worse, there were more IDs. 6 more. Some marked inactive, some with no location yet. One had an address that was only 5 miles from mine. Someone else was next. I stared at that spreadsheet for over an hour. Each entry had a date, location, and status. Some said inactive. One said escalation failed. And 3 were listed as monitoring ongoing. One entry caught my eye. Subject ID number 006. Initial response positive. Location, Ashland, Oregon. Ashland was only 15 miles south of Medford. There was a note next to it. Infant present. Subject unaware of test. Emotional instability promising. I knew I couldn't ignore this. I called the detective. Told him there was someone else on the list. Possibly another parent like me. He told me he'd pass it along, but his voice was tired. They were stretched thin. Cheryl was still missing, and the media was starting to lose interest. So I went myself. I drove to Ashland that afternoon. Didn't know what I was looking for exactly, just a hunch. I figured she'd be in a townhouse complex, something with shared walls. I visited 3 neighborhoods before I found it. Same layout. Same building style. Like mine, just older. I parked and walked the complex until I heard it. That low hum. That same vibration you don't notice at first, but once you hear it, it gets under your skin. Just like at my place. I found the unit. There were toys in the yard. A faded tricycle. A baby swing. Someone lived there with a toddler. The house attached to it had closed blinds and a dead flower pot on the porch. No name on the mailbox. I knocked on the first door, the one with the toys. A woman answered. She looked exhausted. Pale, dark circles under her eyes. I introduced myself carefully and told her I was from Medford. That I had lived through something similar. That I thought she might be in danger. She hesitated. Then she opened the door a little wider. And I heard it. The faint sound of a baby crying from inside. I thought I was losing my mind, she whispered. The noise. It's only at night. My son won't sleep. He wakes up screaming. Sometimes I hear him crying, even when he's not. Like echoes in the walls. I stepped inside. Same layout. Same setup. The nursery shared the wall with the other unit. I asked if she had seen her neighbor. Barely, she said. Some woman moved in about 2 months ago. Never saw a moving truck. She's quiet. Too quiet. But I swear I hear movement in the walls. I told her everything. About Cheryl. About the devices. The recordings. The spreadsheet. Her hands started to shake. That night, I brought my sound monitor to her place. Set it up. Sat with her until the baby fell asleep. At 2:14 a.m., it started. The monitor lit up. Same frequency. Same pitch. Then a new sound, a voice whispering something we couldn't make out. Then, buried under the noise, crying. Not just the baby. Her crying. It had been recorded. The next morning, I made a call. Not to the police. Not to the news. I called someone who owed me a favor, a man I hadn't spoken to since my army days. He worked private security now. Specialized in surveillance countermeasures. He came down the next day with 2 others and a van full of equipment. They swept both townhouses. This time, the setup was more advanced. Smaller speakers. Hidden in vents. Buried behind outlet plates. Triggered by motion sensors and sound cues. Remote controlled. And a new feature, feedback loops. Audio patterns designed to trick your brain into thinking the crying never stops, even when it does. They pulled out the devices. Bagged everything. But the woman next door was already gone. Again. Just like before. Another name. Another identity. The landlord had a lease with someone named Darla Hicks. No ID on file. The phone number didn't work. Cheryl, or Darla, or whatever her real name was, had slipped away again. But she left something behind. In the woman's attic, behind the insulation, was a small black box. No lights, no buttons. Just a single USB port. Inside it? Live tracking data. Coordinates. Locations. Every one of them matched the places on the spreadsheet. All her subjects. And one new one. Subject ID number 008, assigned. Activation in progress. Location, Medford, Oregon. Address, my sister's house. Where Micah was. I didn't even grab my jacket. I drove 90 miles an hour back to Medford. Called my sister on the way. No answer. Called again. Voicemail. My hands were shaking so bad I almost missed the turn to her neighborhood. Her house looked normal. Too normal. I banged on the door. She opened it holding Micah. He was crying. She looked confused. I don't know what's wrong with him. He just started screaming like something hurt him. I ran inside. I went straight to the guest room where he'd been sleeping. Nothing looked out of place. But when I leaned near the vent, I felt it. The hum. She had planted a device in my sister's house. Somehow. I found it in the air duct. Smaller than the others. Wireless. Battery-powered. Probably triggered remotely. But it wasn't playing recordings this time. It was broadcasting something live. A voice. My voice. Saying his name over and over. In a distorted whisper. They were trying to turn Micah against me now. Trying to poison him with my own voice. I crushed the device in my hand. Then I checked every room in the house. We found 2 more. Hidden behind wall plates. Under his crib. Inside a stuffed bear we didn't recognize. Micah had been sleeping next to that thing for 3 nights. She had been inside the house. After we found the bear, I called the police again. I showed them the devices, told them she had broken into my sister's house. They wrote a report. Promised to assign someone to the case. But I could tell they weren't taking it seriously. They didn't get it. They didn't understand what Cheryl really was. So I decided I'd handle it myself. I wasn't scared anymore. I was done. I went back to the spreadsheet. Looked at every address. Every city. I found something weird. Every subject was near a known defense or research contractor. Places like Boeing, Lockheed, private tech firms, even universities that worked on sound engineering. She wasn't just some bitter old woman with issues. She had training. And she had help. The black box we found in Ashland had GPS logs. All of her travel routes. One city popped up a lot, Mountain View, California. Home of a dozen tech companies. I dug deeper. And then I found him. Dr. Elliot Graves. Sound cognition specialist. Used to work for DARPA. Got let go after rumors he was testing acoustic influence tech on homeless people without permission. His public record said he retired. But 2 of the flash drives we found had labels with his initials. I drove to Mountain View. His house was easy to find. Quiet neighborhood. Big yard. Fancy mailbox. I parked down the street and waited. At 10:17 a.m., a woman came out of the house. Thin, gray ponytail. Cheryl. She got in a black sedan and drove off. I followed. She went to a coffee shop. Met with a man in a gray blazer. I recognized him from Graves' photo. They sat down. Talked for an hour. Then left in different cars. I followed Graves. He led me right to a private lab on the edge of town. The sign outside just said, Sinvar Tech. No company logo. No windows. I parked around back. Found a side door propped open. Slipped in. It was mostly empty halls, but I followed the sound, faint buzzing through the walls. Then I found it. A room lined with foam panels. Dozens of speakers. Laptops. Walls of screens showing people. Kids. Old men. Women crying. All in their homes. It was live. They were still doing it. Testing sound on people in real time. They were recording reactions. Taking notes. Adjusting frequencies. This wasn't about revenge. It was research. I took photos. Grabbed 2 hard drives sitting near the monitors. Then I heard footsteps. I ducked out just in time. I got back to Medford that night. Sent the drives to my old army contact. He cracked them within a day. Everything was on there. Names. Subjects. Funding. Emails between Graves and Cheryl. They called it Project Quiet Mind. The goal? To use targeted sound to manipulate behavior. Create breakdowns. Test submission. See how far people could be pushed with just noise. Cheryl was the field operator, Graves called her. His most reliable data gatherer. And me? I was subject number 004. Emotionally volatile. Exhibits protector reflex. Excellent escalation pattern. He had picked me on purpose. I thought I was the victim of a crazy neighbor. But I was a test subject in a government-adjacent experiment. So I went public. I uploaded the recordings. The photos. The logs. I sent everything to a reporter I trusted. A woman who once covered military abuse cases. She published it. It blew up. CNN, Vice, The Guardian, all picked it up. People across the country came forward. Some said they had felt the same thing, strange noises, loss of sleep, paranoia, but thought it was in their head. It wasn't. The government denied it, of course. But Sinvar Tech went under investigation. And Cheryl? She was found 6 days later. Burned body. Remote cabin. Empty pill bottle beside her. The news said it was suicide. But I saw the fire damage photos. The burns didn't match up. The location didn't either. She didn't go there to die. She went there to disappear. And someone made sure she didn't. Graves got arrested 2 weeks later trying to board a flight to Belize. The files I leaked were enough to bring charges. He's facing life in prison. The other, test houses, were all shut down. The devices were destroyed. The lawsuit settled fast. They paid me $2.3 million. Enough to buy a house with no shared walls. In the middle of nowhere. With real silence. But none of that fixed Micah. He still wakes up sometimes shaking. Still flinches at low noises. Still won't sleep near vents. He's only 5, but the damage is done. And me? I live with it every day. I wanted revenge. I wanted Cheryl to suffer. But I didn't want this. I didn't want to find out how far people will go in the name of science. Or control. Or cruelty dressed up as research. I didn't want to learn that in this country, you can be broken down in your own home, and no one will believe you. Until you make them. Until you fight back. That's what I did. I tore their quiet apart.